Welcome to the Real Life Man podcast, where we discuss masculinity, faith, and the struggles we don't always talk about. All right, well, welcome back, everyone, to Real Life Men's podcast here. And we're so thankful to have you guys listening. We are here with Justin and Chris. And today we wanted to really go over Chris's story and what it means to uh, be in the shoes of Chris and really get his backstory, because I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. I've known Chris for a little bit less than 9 months, but his story was very impactful and powerful to me. So uh, Justin and I will be just kind of listening in, and we'll be asking questions along the way. But yeah, I will let you go for it, Chris.
Well, I'll first say that I actually love sharing my story because it reminds me of the power of God, the miracles I've received in my life, based on how my life started. But also, I find it encourages other people, namely men, because we relate as men. And after sharing this today, I can't even share my whole story in a short time frame, but I'll give some aspects of it. So, first of all, what I do today does not match up with how my life started, guys, at all. And that I think that's the case for many people. But my wife and I lead a mentoring nonprofit called Fahrenheit Real Life Mentoring. And I only say that I'm not about titles, but I should not be doing the work that I'm doing today based on how my life started. I should not be standing up in front of people, giving them tools how to be healthy holistically. I should not be mentoring men and helping them step out of dysfunction and difficulty and pain. And yet, it's amazing what God's allowed me to do today. So, I was born into the home of an alcoholic father, young parents for the most part, great dysfunction. We moved a lot. I probably have shared with you guys before, but I lived in 18 different homes or apartments by the time I was 18 years old in four different towns, okay, two different states.
Jeez Louise.
That's really unhealthy. And yet, what it did for me, it um, it began to build a DNA in my mind, my head, my brain rather, that this is how life is. And so when you move that often, and there was never any reason, I mean, healthy reason, and there was no planning, no one ever said, "Hey, Chris, by the way, we're going to be moving next week." You would come home from school or something and say, "We're moving in 2 days." And there was very little time for closure. Most time there was no closure. And so what that did, it built inside of me this sense of loss that anything good you have will be taken away. Now, no one said that to me, but when things happen and are presented to you in life over and over and over again, our brains begin to create these neural pathways that tell us this is what it is, this is how it is. And so let's say, left to myself, if the Lord had not healed my brain, my soul, I'll say, of this mindset, getting to know you guys, I would limit how close I would have gotten in the past because I would look at you, Justin, and you, Mark, and go, well, these guys could be good friendships, but they will be lost to me at some point. So I'm just going to limit how much I get to know them. Now, I didn't realize I was doing that early on because it's just what I knew. So, born into the home of an alcoholic father, uh, my mom got pregnant. No, they got married young and then got pregnant very quickly, but she didn't get to finish high school. Very smart lady, but never got to finish her high school. My dad was a professional musician and really gifted. And so he would travel a lot, and they were put into a situation to marriage, children quickly, um, with no or little foundation of how to be parents, of how to raise a family. So we moved around a lot. I never had a relationship with my father, even though we lived in the same house for many years off and on. They would separate, get back together, but I never had a real conversation with my father. I never felt like my dad knew me. I remember, okay, it's just as a little boy. I remember sitting in the living room and wanting to sit in my dad's lap. I wanted him to put his arms around me and just look at me and spend time with me. Now, as a 5 year old, I couldn't express that, but that was inside of me. I still have a memory of some of that. I want to sit in my dad's lap, or I want him to carry me on his shoulders. I want him to play. I want to wrestle. I want to just be together. But my dad didn't know how to do that. And so as I look at my life, I really believe I was alone a lot internally. I was, in the home with four other siblings and a mom all the time, a dad occasionally, but I never really felt connected. I felt alone most of my life.
Hmm.
I'm going to pause there for a second and ask you guys if you have any questions you want me to address or something I've already said, make a comment on.
What was the common stable element in your childhood? Was there anything? Was it your mom? Was it your siblings? Or what?
What was the common stable element?
Yeah, was there what kind of stability did you have at all?
Boy, Justin, that's a great question. Guys, it's interesting how someone can ask you a question that you've never thought about. And you go, this has been my life. Well, it was my mom for the most part. I have to give her so much credit. A young mom doing the best she could. Um, but my mom had her own challenges and issues. I mean, my dad was abusive, and my mom, not that she didn't want us to be abused. When I say abused, it was verbal abuse, physical. You'd be slapped around if he was in the mood to do that. There was never sitting down and say, Chris, you're going to be punished for this. You're going to go to your room or you're going to lose a privilege. There was no conversation to be had. You would just be slapped. I
Hmm.
remember my dad actually making this statement. If you'd said or did something he wasn't pleased with, I remember him saying, I ought to slap you. I should slap your face. That was normal in my home. And I say normal, that was normal to us. It was only years later after getting out of that, I realized that's not normal. That's not healthy. So, Justin, what was the stabling force in my life? It was my mom in some ways, but others not, because no one stood up to my dad and said, no more of this dysfunction.
Hmm.
We were, in a sense, trapped. Yeah.
How much do you relate to your dad today and what you were able to observe from him? Because you know how that kind of the generational sins kind of come down, and it's like, oh man, I feel like you have so much more of a I mean, you seem so normal to have come out of such an abusive household. And uh, what was that road like?
What was the question? What was what like?
What was the road like?
I'm having to pause, guys, because some of these questions I've never been asked before.
Hmm.
Um, all right, I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but I remember hating my father. Guys, let's just get real. Those that are listening, be honest. You can even hate a parent. All right. If you've been abused and or someone else, we're human. You can have hatred toward that person. I did. In fact, I remember asking God, I had a relationship with Jesus from the age of 9. I remember asking God when I was in probably, I don't know, 15 years old. I wanted God to take my dad out, kill him, take him out of my life. I'm sick of this. I'm tired of it. That's where I'd gone. And over the years, as God matured me and helped me to see, beyond myself, I was able to forgive my dad and actually have love for my dad. Now, keep in mind, my dad never asked for forgiveness. He never admitted any fault, ever, on any level. And he died at the age of 71. But what God changed me in the middle of it all. And yeah, I was never close to my dad. Um, how did I get here today with a lot of struggles and challenges and deep insecurity? As I'm not a guy to wear a mask, and I don't know that I wore masks growing up, but sometimes we're handed masks without even realizing it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay, so this is how you act in this setting. This is how you say things in this setting. I had a conversation with one of my younger sisters recently, and we're talking about some childhood events. And she has a memory of going to this couple's home that my dad really liked and respected. And she said, I remember our dad talking like in ways he didn't talk at home. And she said, I remember thinking, who is this man? And you would have thought we had this wonderful family. Things were wonderful. But as a young girl, she knew that's fake. I said, I remember that too. That we didn't talk each other about that as siblings, but I remember thinking, well, this is fake. This is not reality for us. Guys, there's so much I could say about that and other topics growing up. But what I was handed was a lot of insecurity. And yet I never talked about it. I had this mindset, I was handed this. You've got to figure life out on your own. There's nobody to really help you. You've got to just make things happen. You got to suck it up and push forward. So I
Mm,
did a lot of that. But the problem with that, you get worn out and you lay down at night in bed and you realize you think about your weaknesses and your fears and your struggles and your sins, and you go, I'm not trying to wear a mask and be fake. I don't know how to live in this life though, because I'm told you got to just push through.
Mm.
And yet I would say my soul was dying to just be Chris Elledge.
mm.
But I didn't really know what that was. Guys, I remember talking about someone talking with me about personality styles. I think I was seventh grade. And after we talked through some of it, I was afraid I didn't have a personality. How crazy is that?
Hmm.
I was so insecure and didn't understand myself because no one helped me with this. I didn't know that Chris Ellis had a personality. I remember thinking, wow, maybe I don't have one of those.
That's
That's
crazy.
that's crazy.
And it's got to be a painful process to try and figure out who Chris Elledge is too. And not to kind of cut into your story, but do you know who Chris Elledge is today?
Oh, for a long time now. And this may sound cliche to some people, but I really like myself. I do. I like who I am. And yet, who I am, the foundation of that has always been with me. God didn't make a mistake. Um, I I led a funeral. I spoke at a funeral of an uncle of mine um, about 20 years ago. And we arrived back home to my aunt's house after the funeral. We're eating, and a lot of the family are in the kitchen area, dining room area. And one of my cousins looks at me and said, Chris, you did a great job leading the service today. And I said, thank you. And she goes, you've totally changed. You're nothing like you were growing up. Because she knew me growing up. She goes, you were insecure and kind of backwards and awkward as a kid. Now, she said that in front of the whole family, which doesn't make you feel real good, right? But from her perspective, and I was in some ways. I was so insecure that it made me quiet. People thought, guys, I got the quiet award in the seventh grade. Give me a break. A teacher can't think of a better award to give you than that. I remember being so embarrassed to walk to the front of the class. You know what I said when I received it?
Thank you. Nothing.
Nothing. I didn't say anything. It's the quiet award. Now, I tell you that story because I was covered up with so much junk from how I was raised or not raised. So when my cousin said that to me, she complimented me and then she said, because you're totally different than you were when you were growing up. And I really knew the Lord said, pay attention here. And I looked at her, I said, no, I'm not real different. She goes, yes, you are. You're nothing like you were. I said, no, as I think about it, what you saw today has always been inside of Chris Elledge. It was, and I've grown and developed. Yes, we all do. But the real Chris Elledge was covered up with stuff, insecurity and pain and things like that that no one saw. That was a revelation for me, guys.
So growing up, how did you discover that all those things were there?
Hmm. I don't know that I discovered them, Justin. I felt that I just know I was insecure.
Hmm.
And yet, guys, this is interesting. Uh, I was given the Quiet Award in seventh grade. So back up 2 years before that, I'm in the fifth grade. And um, again, we were poor. I didn't mention that part. So probably how I dressed, how I looked, people would have seen that. And really insecure. And and yet I had this desire to do public speaking, which sounds ridiculous. Okay. This insecure kid who doesn't open his mouth much in front of people. We had a choice. We were in this club called 4-H, and you could either give speeches, public speeches, or you could raise some kind of farm animal. Well, I didn't want to raise a farm animal, and we had no money for that. But I had desire to give speeches, and yet I was so afraid. So I worked on my first speech, and I thought I can't do this. And I remember at the speech contest at our school, it was coming up my time. And this is what I don't know if you guys have ever done this. You ever compared yourself to other guys?
All the time,
All the
growing up
time.
especially.
I'm sitting there as a fifth grade boy, and I see these other guys get up there, nicely dressed, hair is in place. They seem like they've got it all. Again, that's my perspective. And I want to run out of the room and thinking, what am I thinking? Who am I to try to do this? And then they say the kid finishes, and this kid's got this nice navy jacket on with brass buttons, a tie, and a white shirt. And I thought, wow, I am trash. I literally saw myself almost like that worthless. Why should I? I don't belong here. Then they called Chris Elledge, and I took a deep breath, got up there. You know what happened? I opened my mouth and I spoke. Check this out. This is from fifth
Maybe.
grade. Now, guys, we just decided on this topic a few minutes before we did the podcast. This is in my desk drawer. This is from 1972 or 3. That's crazy.
Man, what a testimony. You still have that ribbon from,
I have it. And there's a medal on it. I got a medal because I did an extra good job.
man, that's cool.
That's not bragging. That's telling you guys that you can be really insecure. You can be struggling. You can be thinking, I don't belong here. But God was stirring in me. He says, Chris Elledge, you've got this in you. I want this for you. But hear me on this, guys. No one was encouraging me to do this. My parents weren't. My parents didn't have that inside of them to help me to see better for myself. Like I don't remember them saying, "You've got this. You can do it, Chris." But that was God talking to me and helping me. And I walk away with uh, it's purple now because of the years fading, but it was a blue ribbon with a medal on it. And then we went to, that was our own school. Then we go to another school later on. If you did well at your own school, then you compete against other schools. Same thing. I'm sitting there in that class thinking, I can't do this. Who am I to think I belong up here? And I got another blue ribbon and another medal. I share that story with you guys. Guys, you know what I do for a living today? I talk all the time and I listen, but I do a lot of talking, either in front of people or one on one. God, there's a thread of God in my life. He knew when He was giving this to me as a fifth grade boy who was really insecure. Trust me, I've got a purpose, I've got a plan for this. Yeah.
Yeah, that it isn't that so cool though to see that God was able to just tell you, hey, look, you have this whether you like it or not, and your insecurities may feel like they're the biggest thing in the room right now, but really it's what I've given you is going to trump all of that. And that's amazing. That's like a real gift that you can't replace. And so it's super encouraging. So where did you go after that then? What happens next? Who is, how does, how do you get from being a kid keeping on growing up inside of your home?
Oh, there's so many avenues I could go with this, but what listeners need to understand, you get a blue ribbon, it's great for that day, okay? But you go back to the same house, you go back to the same family, and you deal with the same stuff. And so, you get a little bit older. And I remember struggling. Um, I don't know that I've ever struggled with my sexual identity as a man, and yet I would say I have, in that I didn't know what is a man. I didn't know that. So yes, I would say, what is a man? I never felt like I measured up, guys. I remember playing basketball starting in the fifth grade. I wanted to do it, but I was really insecure. And you're in the locker room and you're seeing and hearing other guys talk. And um, I didn't feel like I ever related sometimes because I had all this going on in my head. But guess what? Those other guys who were in the locker room and on the court, they would have related a lot more to me because they were having similar thoughts, but nobody talked about it. But I didn't have a dad. When you don't have a dad who will sit you down, look at you in the eyes and say, "You have great value, and I'm going to help you understand what being a man is. And I'm going to share with you strengths and weaknesses and struggles that I've gone through, and we're going to walk through them together. I'm going to talk to you about everything under the sun, son. And as you age, we're going to talk about more things. And I'm never going to give up on you. You're going to be able to come to me and say, Dad, I looked at this pornography, or I had this thought, or I compared myself to another guy and I felt really insecure, didn't measure up. We're going to talk through those things. Didn't have any of that. So what happened after that, Mark? I continued to have these scenarios in my head. And I was always going to church for the most part, but no one at church talked about these things. I realized I limited myself many times in my life. I did not step out of my comfort zone much at times because I was afraid to fail. Um, Concerning with sports or relationships, um, academically, I look back and I did the minimum sometimes because I was afraid to fail because I felt kind of like a loser anyway.
Hmm.
It's interesting. Again, I have not purposely worn masks, but I would say people began to see me as a leader, and I didn't understand it. I really didn't, because I didn't see myself that way. But there were some things inside of me that people saw and heard that said, "Yeah, Chris, what do you think about this?" And early on in my, I would say middle school, I would have friends who begin. They would tell me some of their stories, or they would tell me their struggles or their problems. And I remember thinking, why are they telling me this? Does my face say, please tell me about your problems or your struggles? But I know that was the Lord giving people confidence and trust with me, where they would open up and just talk. Sometimes they would even say, I don't know why I'm telling you this. So I was that guy that people would come and talk to many times and tell me things. But when we're in a setting with other people, they're not going to mention it. So it's things like that. God began to show me that, okay, there's something you've given me, God, that that shows me that I'm a leader and that people want to talk to me and they want to tell me things. Yeah.
So then, like, what happened after high school?
I knew I'd go to college, and yet I was, again, so clueless. No one to sit down with me and even talk about it. I had to financially, I've always supported myself. My first job was in the fifth grade, guys. Um, I was the custodian at my school. My dad was the custodian. At that point, he convinced me to do his job as a custodian, clean the rooms and the cafeteria, and he'd pay me. I'm in the fifth grade doing this. Now I thought it was cool because I earned some money, and I always felt a bit like an entrepreneur in a way, I guess. I didn't have the language to put to it. but I never got paid for that. My dad always made promises, but I ended up doing his job for him for 2 years almost.
Wow.
And so,
Mm.
I just say that I began working at a young age, all through school. And so I go to college, and I knew I would knew I just knew I'd go to college and graduate. I was really nervous about it. I didn't think I belonged there. Have you guys ever been in situations or places and you're not trying to be fake, but you don't think you really belong there? You feel like an imposter? I
Yeah.
thought, what am I doing in college? And yet I did okay. Again, I didn't stretch myself as much as I wish I had. Um, but I did okay in college. Again, I look back, I never really felt like I had friends that I could really rely on. I spent so much of my life being Chris is a good guy to talk to about your problems, but I never really felt like I had anybody do that for me. And I never really felt like there were other guys who I could depend on, you know? Don't have, when I think back over my years, I don't have a lot of memories of friends. And yet people would have assumed, I promise you, Chris has a lot of friends.
And isn't that like the truth for almost everybody? It seems like they all have really good friends or friendships. And at the end of the day, like you ask them, "Hey, who were your friends growing up?" They're like, I have yet to meet someone that said, "Oh, I had," and some do. Some say I had a best friend or I had a really good group of friends. But a lot say, "Oh, I didn't have any friends growing up." That's interesting to me. I'm like, huh, everybody thinks everybody else has friends. But I feel
Yeah.
like it's maybe the biggest lie that we're giving to one another, right?
I have more real friends today than most people, I will say. And this is why. Because I'm a mentor and that's how I spend my time. And when you get, because we mentor holistically, when you spend time with as a man, when I spend time with another man, various ages, and we get to know each other's stories and we begin to care about each other and we walk through some tough times together, if a friendship is not built, I would say something's off. So I truly do. I have, I would say, many good friends, but it's because I've been very deliberate in the conversations we've had.
Hmm, totally.
Think about this, guys. Think about someone that you've known for many years. They may be a family member, but you really don't know one another. And think about that. It's probably because circumstances just put you together in the same places at times, but the conversations had no depth. Then think of someone that you've known for a short time, and the conversations had depth and they were deliberate, they were intentional. And you go, how is it possible to know someone many years but not really know them, and to know someone for a short time and to really know them? It can happen. It's what we choose to do with our conversations.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, how many of us have been attending a church for years? You don't really know anyone's struggles or anything. They come to church with that church mask on, and then they just leave, and that's where it ends.
So, Justin, you mentioned college. So I graduate college and started, in my career. And this is where I needed a mentor, guys. I never had a mentor in my life. Never had another man to say, Chris, I'm going to put my arm around you and I'm going to walk through some of this stuff. You don't need to be insecure here, but you are today. Let's walk through that together. You don't need to try to figure that out. I'm going to help you with it. You don't need to try to you don't need to try so many different jobs. I see this in you. That would it makes no sense, Chris, for you to pursue that particular job. That's not who you are. But I had no one in my life to do that, so I'd try this and I would try this. Again, I was so insecure that I would limit myself on I'm not even going to apply for that position because what if I can't do it? What if I don't understand it all? My wife will tell you the same thing about her own journey, that we did not step out of our comfort zones enough early on in our careers. And it's unfortunate. So people don't have to do that. You don't have to be stuck in that, but we were. But I needed a mentor in my life, but never had anyone. Um, yeah, so relationships, I didn't date much. You know why? I was so insecure. If you don't ask a girl out, then she doesn't have the chance to say no. But again, no one knew that about me, you know? So again, I allowed myself to be really lonely that way. And yet I know God protected me many times in dating. Um, Again, because I compared myself to other men. Guys, when you compare yourself, two things happen. Either you don't measure up at all, and you're not going to be able to measure up, or you see yourself so much better off than another guy, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
prideful. And so you don't win when you compare yourself to anybody else. So I would see, guys dating women, I think, well, I don't have that. I can't do that. So really didn't date
Isn't that
much.
isn't that kind of like the reality though, right? Is when you're so insecure, you feel so it leaves the place for so much more judgment because you see others and you say, wow, they're so much better than me. And then others that you say, wow, they're not as good as me. And I can place myself in this. And we're putting ourselves in the place of God in many ways, right? And so
Mhm.
it's just interesting to think that you look so nice from the outside, but it's true we all struggle with that, right? So, did you judge people a lot growing up? Did you judged yourself a lot that I see, but were you judging others as well?
I'm going to say yes without thinking much about it. Because if I saw someone, I compared myself to someone and I thought they were better than me or they had what it took or whatever, then that's judging them as well. And people I would see as less. And that's disgusting to even say to me. Oh, and yet, guys, I don't know if this will relate or not. I remember settling on some friendships because I knew these friendships, these people would not, I wouldn't feel less around them or I wouldn't be challenged by them. Do you follow me?
Mhm.
And actually, that's disrespecting them at the same time. But in my insecurity, okay, I'll be friends with these people here because um, I feel like I at least measure up or maybe a little further along on the journey, um, or they won't challenge. I won't be challenged. So I'm safe with these friendships. What a friendship. I'm being sarcastic there. It's really not. Yeah. Other questions come to your mind?
Well, tell us about your walk with Christ then. Like, what did that look like for you as you were growing up in this unstable household? I don't know. I would have imagined if that's my example of what a Christian's supposed to be like, why would you stick with it?
Okay, this image just came to me. Imagine you're in a war zone and there's gunfire and bombs and screaming, all this chaos around you. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but when you grow up in the dysfunction like I did, it's survival mode. We didn't live. I didn't realize this until I was out of college, I think. I didn't really know how to live life because we were always in survival mode.
Hmm.
I promise you, it was always survival, even in the holidays. So you have that image going on around you, but at the age of 9, I I came to Christ. And I knew it was real. I knew God was speaking to me, and yet I didn't have words for it so much. So I come to Christ. I was at church, and not that church did it, but there was a message that just resonated with me. And I run out of my seat basically. I was just a shy kid, and I run down the front. My mom is like, "What are you doing?" Because I didn't do that. I didn't bring attention to myself as a kid. And I remember I knew I went home that night with something amazing. So my mom, God bless her, she was able to help me explain the best she could to a 9-year-old. Shortly after that, this will sound strange to some people, and that's okay, but I know it's real for me. I'm down the street from our home. It had just rained, and the sun was coming through the clouds. And I remember looking up at the clouds. I was by myself, And I felt the presence of God telling me, I didn't hear it audibly, Chris, I'm always going to be with you. 9 years of age. I didn't go home and tell anybody about that because I didn't have words for it. But as I would continue to grow and develop, I knew that was real. And
Mm,
I'd push it away for a while. Wait a minute, God, you reminded me I'm always going to be with you. So I grew up in that like war zone type atmosphere. And yet I always felt the presence of God. Guys, when I was in deliberate sin, a rebellion against God in middle school and high school, part of college, I knew God was always with me. And thank God I never compared my earthly dad to my heavenly father, God. I never confused those two. Thank goodness. Some people struggle with that. I didn't. I remember thinking, God is this. My dad makes his own choices. That's who he is. God is not like my dad. So my relationship with the Lord has grown over the years. Now, thank goodness, I've also stepped out of what I would call legalism because many times you can be handed well-meaning people. Okay, Chris, if you're going to follow God, you're going to be a good boy. That gets on my nerves. Okay. You got to do this, 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 and this. Okay, great. I'll do that. That gets old, guys.
Mm.
And that checklist, and you can't keep up with it. It's exhausting. It's not a relationship that way. And it always felt artificial to me. You know why? Because it is. If that's what it's based upon. So I've always felt the Lord's presence. I can tell you when I pushed him aside because I want to do my own thing. Um, I think the thing that has resonated for me is that God has taught me every day is a new beginning with him. So let's say I blew it yesterday and I chose to sin in this way or ignore this or do that. Today's a new day. God, I give this to you. My heart's pure before you, God. But you know, God, I'm capable of anything. He goes, you are, Chris. But that's where you talk to me and you continue to let me change you and mold you. So I know we only just have a few minutes, right? Okay. So let me make a few statements. I wish I could have seen a video. I could see a video of myself when I was a boy, like very young, middle school, even high school. My body language would have been so different than it is as I got older. And this is why God began to stir. Let me use this again. That beginning sense of confidence in what He's made me, what He's put inside of me, He began to stir that in me without me even really realizing it at times. This deep confidence that no man can touch.
mm,
Guys, this is not arrogance. Either we are authentically confident or we're not. So you guys could say something to me in our friendship that could hurt me. I'm human. Even if you ridiculed me and said this work you're doing is a joke, that would hurt me, okay? But
mm,
you're not going to get to the that deep confidence that's in my soul. That comes from the Holy Spirit, guys. The Lord's given that to me. So this insecure young boy who was never fathered, ever fathered. And guys, I'm not angry at my dad. God's helped me to walk through that. But I didn't have that. But God's given me such a solid confidence. And yet I realize how capable I am of anything, of falling into things, you know? Years ago, I think I was about 35, and I was on staff at a church in Arizona. And we had a campus between buildings, and the music minister at the time, he was older, seemed ancient to me at the time. We're talking, he says, Chris, I like the way you walk. I said, what are you talking about? That sounded weird. He goes, I saw you walking across the campus. He goes, you walk like you know where you're going in life. I said, it still didn't. I said, what do you mean? He goes, just how your body language is, how you look at people, how you walk, your shoulders are back, your chin is up. Now, that could be arrogance, okay? And it wasn't. Or that could be that's that deep confidence God has given me. I've never forgotten about that. And I always think about that. And I'll meet guys and I don't see that inner confidence. They know where they're going, what God's got for them. And that's what I want to help them to realize and to have.
Man, I love this the way that you approach that because I can relate in so many different ways, Chris. And Um, I really enjoy being your friend. I think that you have so much to bring to the world, but also are able to put into words and communicate what I've been able to go through as well. So it's amazing to hear your story and see how what God has been able to do inside of your life and see who you are today versus this the little kid back in fifth grade, was it, talking in front of everybody. Yeah, I just think that that's mind blowing. So we're gonna have to have a part two of this. And I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for coming on here, Chris. Did you guys have any last words before we close out here?
Justin, you have anything?
Awesome.
No,
I will say this as your people are listening to this. Some of you are those really insecure boys still, and you've been handed a lot of junk, and it's overwhelming, and you can't imagine being a confident man authentically, but it's there for you. But guess what? You need some help. There's no
Mhm.
shame in that. In fact, we have needs. That's how God's made us. And what if I take what God's given me and he's allowed me to go through a lot of pain and difficulties. He didn't cause my insecurity, but I've gone through it. And to be able to come alongside another man and help him walk out of that and to actually be truly confident as a person, as a man. That's a privilege we get to
Mhm.
do.
Thank you for those closing words, Chris. That's awesome.
High school was not really enjoyable for me because of my family dynamics. I had to work a lot to help pay, take care of the family. And I'm really a sociable guy. But if I look back and think back to high school days, I bet a lot of people thought I wasn't very sociable. But there was so much um, pain and difficulty and ongoing stress in my life. And I worked almost full time in high school. And I tried to keep my grades up and anyway, just a lot of things going on. So I probably came across as a guy who wasn't very sociable, not a leader, um, probably not well liked. And yet those things weren't true about me. I very much was a leader. I was well liked. The people that actually knew me, and I was good with people. And that's not bragging. That's just how God's made me. My point in this is that in high school, I was covered up with so much junk and so pull in different directions because of the family dynamics that I lived in that the real Chris Elledge wasn't seen for the most part. So I go to college. I always knew I'd go to college, but no one in my family, my parents never encouraged that or talked about it. They didn't go to college, and that's okay. But there was no person to bounce ideas off of. But I knew inside of me, I remember being in the seventh or eighth grade, and I knew, I don't know what I'll major in, but I'm going to go to college. I knew that as a boy. And so I go off to college and I chose a major. And, it was during that time, though, I'd been following the Lord off and on. I came to Christ at 9, and He was real to me, guys. I never doubted the presence of God in my life from the age of 9. But from that point on, it was valleys and hills, difficulties and some good times. But I pulled away from the Lord and I began to drink alcohol. And I'd go to parties and guys, I would get wasted. Okay. That's not bragging. I mean, I would get wasted because it's interesting. It gave me a sense of confidence, which was a false confidence to actually the real Chris Ellis come out and talk. All right.
mm,
So I was the life of the party, I was told when I was drunk. And yet it was miserable for me. And the Holy Spirit got a hold of me and said, Chris, one of the things you've hated in your life was the alcoholism that your dad has been in your whole life. Think about what you're doing. And I had a moment in my life where my mother got really ill and thought she was going to die. This was early on in college, and God used that to really, did he use it? Yes, he did, to shake me up. And so I put it aside and I said, okay, God, I'm going to follow you. So fast forward, a little bit, I get ready to graduate college, and I thought I was following God. I was the best I knew how. But again, guys, I never had a mentor. I went to a church and I heard sermons, but we never talked about real life. The things that were inside my head, like we talk about on this podcast, that was not available to me. And I just thought, well, again, you can think you're weird or different or alone or people are not going to understand you. In reality, if you had a trusted man to sit and talk with, he would tell you what you're going through, what you're dealing with. A lot of that's just normal. And so let's talk through it. But I didn't have that. So I pushed through the best I could. And I remember telling God as I was getting ready to graduate from college. And I remember in my prayer, God, come on, let's go. I'm getting ready to graduate. I've got plans. In my ignorance, I was telling God, let's go. Well, guys, it doesn't work that way. God says, no, I don't follow you, Chris. You follow me. And so he allowed me to have um, deal with many struggles over about a 6 year period. I call it my desert experience. I went from different jobs. I went from different places to live. I lived in two or three different towns in Oklahoma at the time, had different roommates. I dated a little bit, not much, off and on. And from the outside, I looked like a very unstable person, I believe. But I was just confused. I didn't have a direction, but I knew I wanted to follow God and I knew I wanted to have a career and a family someday. Again, there was just no one to talk to. So I want to pause there and ask you guys, do you have any questions? A particular area you want me to go into?
Well, I think what's interesting is it sounds like you and I had a similar experience where it feels like you didn't, there's so much piled on top of who you really are that you can't dig through and figure out who's who really you are, like what's going on. So how did you start to address that?
Well, that's a nice question, and it may be a bit complicated to answer. How did I? Okay. Well, thankfully, I continue to seek out the Lord. And the guys, I'm not saying that to sound religious. I've never seen myself as religious, but God has been so real to me, and so I'd say, God, this is not working out. What do I do? And God did put one man in my life. He was my singles pastor, and I was again frustrated with my career, the job I was in. I wasn't dating anyone, and I joined this church to be a part of the singles group. You know why? You know why I joined that church? Because
Because
I
you
wanted
wanted
to
Find a
meet a
spouse?
woman. I wanted to meet a woman. Yeah.
to.
I wanted to date. What so many things I love about the Lord, but he understands that as a young man. And so it may have sounded not very faithful to God. Not at all. I was trying to follow the Lord, but I wanted a relationship in my life. And so I
Mhm.
go to this singles group, and this singles pastor, he's still a part of my life today, and that's been a long time ago. But he saw potential in Chris Elledge. He quickly saw me as a leader. And I went there to get a date, and before I knew it, I was leading. I go, hey, how'd this happen? And I didn't have a date yet still, but I was leading others. And so I was frustrated in my career and relationships. And he took me aside one day and says, Chris, um, in the Bible, in the New Testament, Paul talks about um, that he's learned to be content in his current circumstances. Things are not good sometimes. Things are difficult or things are okay. But he said, learning to be content in your current circumstances. He said, I challenge you to really look at that. And that's always stayed with me. And so the real Chris Elledge being seen, Justin, as you ask, to get that junk off of me, the more I let out, then I began to open up and I'd be real. And I'd say, guys, here's something I've gone through. This is a challenge I'm dealing with. Um, this is a fear I have. And I never thought about it, but if you're covered up with uh, I don't know, let's say you work outside in the garden or you're a mechanic and you're just covered in grease or dirt and you've got layers of clothes on and a hat maybe and you want to get that off of you, right? So you can take a shower. It's like taking the ball cap off, the outer shirt off, the t-shirt off. Every time I began to open up my life and be authentic in conversations, guys, I didn't think about this till now. It's like uncovering that junk that was covering up the real Chris Hillage.
Mm.
And what's amazing to me is that God put me in the lives of so I would have been about 26 at the time. All right. And then I was in a position to basically help build a college department um, and go out and help develop the men in that church. Not on staff, just as a layperson. I was working, a regular job. And God just really opened up doors for those guys. And I'm still friends with some of them today, and that's been a long time ago. But when I look back, I had no one to constantly walk the journey with me. But God just stirred me inside and said, Chris, you can make a difference in these men's lives, but you got to be real. You got to be authentic. You got to be the one to take the initiative and put your stuff out there first. Yeah.
And isn't it interesting the way that being authentic first opens up doors for the other person? They're the people that you're telling it to for them to be able to open up as well, right? Um, and you need to be able to start there if you want to have a real relationship with someone else or the people that you're talking with, and showing that vulnerability again, it goes such a long way. And that's really cool. What would you say was the turning point for you in that? Like, was there something specific that made you, what helps you understand how to be more, not just vulnerable, but share with the people that were in front of you?
This may sound kind of goofy, but if you like dessert, and you see it sitting there and you take a small bite and you go, okay, that's enough. It's really not enough, just a taste of it. It tastes so good, or whatever your favorite food is, and you want more of it. I kind of see it that way. I would put myself out there and tell a story about myself. I would be vulnerable. I'd be transparent. I would share a struggle that was going on in my mind with another guy and see their response and see them open up. It's like, man, I want more of that.
Mm,
Does it make sense?
does.
Yeah.
I had a guy several years ago. I'm sitting across from him, and he was in his later 20s at the time. And I was a husband and a dad, so I'm already in those roles. But I was far enough along in life that I could relate to him as a younger man. And he said, "Chris, I've grown up in church." And he said, "I work for a Christian school. Um, I'm surrounded in this environment." But he goes, and his eyes were wide when he said it. I didn't think this was possible between two men, that you could talk about these kind of things so naturally, so openly, and enjoy doing it. And just like, you know what, it's like exhaling. And that's not, I mean, that's not that is the norm, guys. I believe as I talk with guys, many guys have never had that opportunity to just put it out there and be themselves without judgment, but just talk, get it out of your head. He said, I didn't know this was possible. And he did tell me, ask about his dad. He said, Chris, I have a really good dad. He goes, but my dad didn't know how to do this with me. He said, you're the first person pretty much in my life, and he was later 20s at this point, where I could just talk as a man of God about real things in my life. I find that a lot of the time.
And it is so crazy because it's just the it's almost like the norm, right? Because we were talking just before we started, like what a real man is, and the description that most people give will not include be vulnerable and share your deep heart things that are happening inside of your brain and emotions, because men are not supposed to have either, you know. And and that's sad because it's like, no, things happen with everyone, and we need to be able to communicate and be honest about it, and have someone we a group of people, many people that we can share those things with, because that's the road to deliverance, right?
And I
I
think
don't.
like the biggest lie that Satan tells us is that when you actually say something, that person's going to reject you. And that definitely happens sometimes,
Mhm.
but in the majority of cases, people get where you're coming from. And I was talking with a friend yesterday and sharing what happened with me, and he was able to open up too. It's something that everyone really does need.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought. Mark, you had said something about, well, maybe it'll come back to me. But I just find the more I would do this, the more the open doors with conversations would happen. And I
Mm-hmm.
go, I'm not going to do this. Now, I will tell you, I've made some people uncomfortable before. And um, I was speaking at a church one time. Now, I wouldn't do this now, but I was younger, and here's the true story, guys. I say true story. I'm going to be truthful. I was a pastor at the time of a small church. And I say small church because a small church, it's a smaller room and it's more intimate, right? You can't get lost in a like you can in a larger church. Well, I had a message that Sunday that I was going to share, and I'm with a friend looking at a house he was looking to buy. This seems insignificant, but it's really not. We're walking through this house, and it's an empty house at the time, and I don't know what I saw. But I mean, the enemy has plans for my mind every day. And these lustful thoughts hit my mind. And I'm like, whoa. And I hung on to them for a little bit. And I thought, wow, I'm here looking at an empty house. Where'd that come from? And I just thought, I can be so vulnerable at times as a man with sexual lust. So that's like on a Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm getting ready for Sunday. And I knew the Lord said, don't talk about your message you had planned. I want you to talk about how sexual lust can grab a hold of us, and don't be ignorant about that. So this is what I did, guys. I shared the story. I was in this empty house with my friend looking through the rooms, and these images hit me. And I said, guys, here's the reality. I'm your pastor, but I'm a man, and I get battled with sexual lust sometimes. That's just how it is. I don't like it any more than you do. And I said, in fact, guys, uh, who of you guys in this room, how many of you battled with sexual lust at some point in the last week? Raise your hand. I actually did that. And you know how many guys raised their hand?
How many?
Not well, one did. Okay. And
No
I'm looking,
way.
and I knew these guys. I remember actually saying, "Oh, come on, guys, let's get real." I'm saying this up front, and those poor guys are probably sitting there going,
I was
"He
like,
is
I don't
stressing me
want
out."
to.
The guy behind the sound booth in the
Uh,
back, he's the one that raised his hand. Okay, because no
Talk
one
about
was behind him.
exposure.
Anyway, so I
I'm
have to
calling
laugh about
people
that. And
out,
I
Chris.
asked
Come
one of
on,
the,
man.
what'd you say, Mark?
About putting exposing people and putting them out there. Come on, Chris.
I mean, that was my heart was in the right place,
For
but
sure.
you learn over the years, okay, yeah, don't do that.
Hmm.
But my heart was in the right place. Anyway, later I asked this one guy who's a good friend. I said, "Hey, man," I said, "Come on, you know you deal with sexual lust. Why didn't you raise your hand?" He goes, "Chris, I'm sitting next to my wife. If I raise my hand in church, we're having a conversation as soon as church is over." I
Hmm.
said, "Your wife doesn't know that you battle with sexual lust?" He goes, "Yes." Anyway, so I got the point. Right. Don't do that in public.
That's a great
Now, why did
story,
I
Chris.
say
I
that?
love that.
Because God has always put me out there. Okay. And He gives me wisdom and say, okay, next time don't say it that way or don't do that. But guys, with one-on-one, if we don't just put it out there, it's like a bit of a dance. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't need a dance. Let's just talk. What are the thoughts or questions you guys might have?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because the idea of talking is it is exactly the key that you need to be delivered from, and not delivered, but just to um, take away the ability of impact that the devil has in your life to just lay it out there and be like, hey, this is what it is. And putting it in the light sheds that makes the devil crawl out, right? And he does not like that. And but I think that it's true, right? It's always the very first time I had to share about my struggles with same-sex attraction or anything else, it's just like this shame and this guilt come over me. And I'm like, I can't
Hmm.
share. I wouldn't share because it's going to be just a mess if I do, and I'm going to be exposed, and it's going to be, and it's the devil whispering in our ears, right? So I totally agree, and I think that that's my goal is to, even for my son, just be like, hey, look, there's no shame in you saying whatever you need to tell me. I'm not going to be scared about anything that you have to tell me. Like, I'll have to redirect you, but I'm not going to make you feel shamed for it. And that's where my mind goes.
Mark, when you and I met last summer, you were transparent about your struggle. I mean, within minutes of me meeting you. After I left your home, did you have any concern about that you were so open with me so quickly?
Because I practiced so much, because I knew that if I didn't practice, if I didn't learn how to do this, I was the devil would take grasp over me. And I think that
Okay.
that was if you would have been the first person that I would have told, then yes, I think I would have been super in my head about it.
Okay.
But because I've had so many experiences with people just hearing my story and having a good reception of the story, it's like, hey, I know that there was no ill intent. So no, I didn't. But I could see definitely the very first person I ever told my struggles with was just the overwhelming. I cried and I was just like, I don't know what to do with myself and I don't know where to go from here. And there was no real like great outcome at that point.
Okay.
Versus today, it's like, hey, look, we can share our stories and know that the other person's going to share his story, and it just feels like there's a sense of camaraderie that's put in, and we can be at peace, so
That word camaraderie resonates with me because I experienced that as well. So after you told me some of your story, I left there and I was like, that's amazing. And again, I'm I've been listening to stories for many years through mentoring, but I was so encouraged by your transparency and so amazed at the same time going, and I knew God's doing something here. God is doing something here. And now he gave us an easy friendship, and it
pretty
started
pretty
with
darn easy.
transparency. And then Justin, you connecting with Mark through the podcast episode he was on and reaching out to us. Were you nervous about connecting with us originally?
Mm, not really, but I think that's because I feel like through my own experiences, God has really laid on my heart that there are a lack of resources out there. Men don't really know what to do. But when I've started opening up to other people I've gone to church with, you just really see the grace of God and how they're reacting. Um, and so I felt like it was really laid on my heart that I need to help other people be able to do the same thing, finally get healing for whatever they're dealing with too.
Well, and I was excited once you reached out and Mark told me about you. I was excited to meet you. And we've guys we've who are listening to this episode. Justin lives in a different state than we do. We've never shaken his hand, and yet, Justin, to me, you're already a friend. And I feel like I know you, and yet I don't know you. Just because we quickly went to the depths of some conversations that some people never have, or it takes many years to get there. So I'm thankful to have you in my life as well, and how God can use a challenge, a struggle, a difficulty, if we're open to it, to bring us together. I do want to share with you guys so listeners understand my journey. I made a lot of mistakes. I had a lot of struggles. I'm a very healthy man today in all areas, but don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. I still have struggles. I still have doubts and fears. The enemy battles me, all right? And yet I have this internal confidence in my soul that nobody can touch. I'm thankful for that. But from my perspective, I wasted some years on, I played things too safe in my career. Well, this job or this position's good enough for me. I'm probably not qualified, or I probably couldn't do that other thing. You know what that was? That was fear, guys. That was insecurity playing itself out in my heart and my mind. And again, had I had a mentor in my life who knew me well, he would say, Chris, I want you to get off your butt. You are playing it safe and you're going to do some damage and you're going to compromise some really good things. I did. I needed someone to say, get off your butt. You've got what it takes. So I did that in relationships. I did that in career. I did it in how I looked at myself. I remember not really enjoying going shopping for clothes because I didn't like my body. Now, no one would have thought that about me. Uh, okay, if I didn't like my body, then go to the gym, Chris. If that's something that will help you change that image of yourself, do something. But I didn't have anybody to push me and to challenge me at the same time, knowing I can handle this being pushed and challenged because this man loves me. He really wants the best for me. So I made a lot of mistakes and I wasted some good years. And so I say, well, what do I do with that now? I can focus on that, or I can go, today's a new day. And that's okay. That's part of the reason, maybe Mark or Justin, whoever asked this, like, not what motivates me, but having these real conversations. I go, life is short. You don't get it back. Yeah, let's waste several years and have surface conversations with relationships that are supposed to be important to us. A lot of people do that. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
want to encourage our listeners to do that too. Like, I regret waiting until my 30s to really go out and get help, right? So, um, there's no better time than today to try to find that relationship and someone that you can be vulnerable with.
I agree. And I do believe this. I believe God can redeem some lost time. Um, I have some really incredible relationships today, and I'm so grateful for it. And I see potential. I see potential. And a minute ago, Mark, I think you mentioned the soul or emotions, rather. Excuse me, guys. Our soul is our mind, our will, and emotions.
Hmm.
And men are not taught to even know they have emotions or to express them, honestly. You know what you're doing? You are ignoring, denying a part of your soul, a part
Hmm.
of who you are. So I'm not doing that either. And so what I love about this, when you sit down with another man and you get to know him and you care for him, and he knows this guy's the real deal. He's not going to judge me. He's not going to shame me, but he's going to hold me accountable. But he loves me and he walks with me. That man will have the courage. I promise you, I see it all the time, to open up his soul and let his emotions be known. And you want to see a man really grow? Yeah, help a man discover those real emotions that are down in there.
Hmm. That's super good. Yeah, I it's interesting that you're saying this because I think that there's a potential of being able to deliver God and his salvation through that. I think of that because I have a friend that we just heard passed away a couple days ago, and he left
Okay.
behind, he's my age, a wife and four kids, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, and he was struggling with things I didn't even know about, right? And I was like, did you have anybody to talk with? Did you have anybody that was checking on you? And he was a really popular guy. A lot of people knew him, and yet, it was just like, did he was he ever able to get the sense that he would be able to get delivered and talk
Hmm.
about what's happening inside of him? And I'm just like, my goodness, this is what we're trying to prevent. That's the worst case scenario, and it happened, and it sucks. And
Are we talking
so that's
suicide?
no, it was
Okay.
an accident, but under the influence, I believe.
Okay.
Um, and it just like it crushes people, right? And so it's just like, what do you got to be able to deal with the crap that you're going with and going through, and it's not going to be alone. God never promised to leave us alone, and actually, He put a whole like He put the body around us so that we could be together, knit one body. And yet, so many people are finding themselves individually in their own spaces inside of their minds, and it's the devil loves that. He's there to attack it, and it's bad, and so it sucks because this is why we're doing this. It's really to be able to deliver. Yeah.
Last summer, and Mark, you know this, last spring I was introduced to a young cousin of mine. I mean, it's strange. I was old enough to be his dad. He was from another marriage and lived in another state. I'd never met him before. Anyway, 19 years old, and we were able to meet a few times, get to know one another. But anyway, we were just beginning this relationship. But he battled drug addiction, I believe. But he was thrown away by his parents, and he was in foster homes and facilities, and he becomes a young adult and is out on the street. And we met each other through a family member, and I knew I was supposed to try to connect with him. And he was really difficult in the beginning to connect with. It was awkward and strange, and I had to really make myself at times want to connect with him. But I saw beyond that junk on the outside. When we were getting somewhere, he was murdered last summer.
Mm.
We had some great times together, and what I mean is real conversations. I was seeing some open doors with him, and he left me a message. This still gets me. He left me a message on my phone the day before he died, was murdered. He said, "Chris, I look forward to talking to you again." He goes, I want a relationship with you, but I don't really know what that means.
Mm.
And the next day I got a phone call that he'd been murdered. I've kept that message, and I'm going to keep it. And that's part of, guys, we're not doing these podcast episodes so we can get our faces out there to be popular. That's not what this is about. This is about helping men live life well, to look at their junk and their challenges and their struggles, but also to look at the gifts God's given you and to help you grow and have families that you're proud of. Anyway, so I'm experiences like that are incredibly difficult, and yet they stir me and motivate me.
Mm.
Yeah, so his name was Emmanuel. Go figure. And if you know the Bible, you know the word Emmanuel means God with us.
Amen.
I had just 3 months with that young man, and I'm very grateful for it. Well, I think our time is up, guys. But
Yeah.
this is good.
Thank you so much for sharing, Chris. And yeah, we really appreciate the conversation, and being able to grow from this. And so, um, any closing thoughts here, Justin, on your end?
Again, just encouraging our listeners, try to find that person you could be vulnerable with,
Amen.
and start with those relationships now. Find that person. That's where you can find some real healing.
Yeah.
So, well, have a great day, guys, and we'll talk to you guys again next week. Thank you again
All right.
for coming on
Thank
here.
you, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to Real Life Men. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who you think it would speak to also. Please subscribe and leave a review for more honest conversations about manhood, identity, and real life. This podcast is brought to you by Fahrenheit Mentoring. Please visit our website at fahrenheitmentoring.org to listen to other shows and to learn more about our course on how to be a mentor. Have comments or questions to share? Your question may appear on a future episode. Email us at contact@fahrenheitmentoring.org. Until next time, keep being authentic, keep growing, and keep following our God where He leads you.